Welcome back to another video from American Original Dollhouse Miniatures and More. My name is Todd, and today I'm going to walk you through the assembly of the Old West Saloon that you see here. Before we begin, we are going to go through the contents of the box and also gather up the stuff that we're going to need to build it. All right, before you begin, it's a good idea to go through your box and just verify that all the parts are there. Also familiarize yourself with the instructions and the parts. For this assembly, you are going to need either a 1-inch or a 1.5-inch masking tape. I like to have both of them. You're also going to need a pencil, either a scissor, or in this case, I'm using a utility knife, a damp and a dry rag for wiping off the panels. And also for any sanding, you want to wear an N95 dust mask to prevent any inhalation of the dust. It's important that it is an N95 too. With that, let's break out the parts and let's get started. Inside of the box, you're going to find a plan sheet. Now on that plan sheet, it shows both the lower and the upper wall assembly. We are going to use this sheet to help us align the walls as we glue them. So with the first two parts, we have the bump out and the lower front wall. Now there are two miters on the bump out. There is a 22.5 degree on one side, and there's a 45 degree on the other side. We are going to want to line up the 45 degree miters of those two parts, and I'm just going to dust those off. Any dust will prevent the tape from adhering well. To line up the panels, I'm going to use the roof. And I want the bottoms of the panels to be absolutely perfectly flush. So I don't want any gaps in the bottom of the panels. If there's a small gap in the joint, that's okay, but we can't have a gap at the bottom. So holding the front wall towards the outside with one finger and the bump out in around the middle of the panel to keep it from, if you push down on the seam, they're gonna flip up. So we're gonna apply, in this case, a 1.5-inch piece of masking tape down that seam. I'm gonna continue applying pressure with these two fingers to keep it from popping up as I apply the tape. Once we got that, we can move the roof section out of the way, flip the panels over, and apply about a rice-sized bead of glue at the bottom of the valley. We're gonna stay about 1/2 inch away from the top and the bottom. So there you have about a rice-sized bead. It does not take much glue. I'm gonna close those two up, and as I do so, I'm just gonna verify that the angle is correct. In this case, I have to close it a little bit more to get a perfect 90-degree miter. Then I am going to apply one piece of tape starting here, wrapping it around. Now don't pull it too tight here because you don't want to change your corner. Apply that, and then we'll double check just to make sure that nothing changed. And that is perfect. I've already done the other one, so I'm going to set these two pieces aside to dry, and we'll move on to step number 2. Okay, in step number 2, we are going to work on the bump out for the upper floors. Now again, we have the side panel that you can see there that has a 22.5 degree miter on one side, a 45 degree miter on the other side. Then we have the bump out panel, which also has a 22.5 degree and a 45 degree. We, in this case, are going to line up the 22.5 degree miters like so. And as in step number 1, I've already dusted off the panels. I'm going to use the roof panel again to line up the bottoms, making sure again that the bottoms are perfectly flush. Holding the panels without pressing on the joint again, I'm going to apply 1.5 inch tape to that seam. Press it firmly into place. Make sure that it's not going to go anywhere. Flip that panel over, and as in step number 1, apply glue to the bottom of the V, keeping 1/2 inch from the top and 1/2 inch from the bottom. And again, about a rice-sized bead of glue. Now I'm going to close those panels, and as I do, I am going to verify with the plan sheet that these line up. So I'm going to continue closing the panel until we line up. Now if you get any glue squeeze out, this is where the damp rag comes in handy. Just use your damp rag and wipe the glue from the panels before applying a piece of tape like we did in step number 1. In this case, I'm going to go down the center and wrap it around. Now don't pull too tight on these edges. These edges are sharp and they'll rip the tape. So just pull taut and just pull enough to bring the panels together without changing the angle, and close the tape up. I'm just going to verify that that is correct, and that is absolutely perfect. I'll set this one aside. I've already done the second one, so I'll set these two aside, allow those to dry, and we'll move on to step number 3. All right, on to step number 3. We're going to attach the saloon letters to the saloon sign. Again, in this step, I am using the plan sheet, and the letters at the bottom of the plan sheet will help you align the letters. So we're just going to place the letters like so, following that sheet. Now I've taken the time to sand all of my CNC cut parts already, so you may want to do that. Otherwise you can do it as you use the parts. Just make sure you use your N95 respirator so you're not breathing any of the dust. And I'm going to put a panel on here just to hold this down. In fact, I'm going to put 2 panels on there just to hold the sheet down as I work on it. So I'm going to line the letters exactly to the printout of the saloon. Now with the O's, they go only one way. Okay, the little jagged edges are a little higher than the center. So make sure that those line up with the plan. And the same with the N. Just make sure that it lines up. Let's see here. And that's upside down. So just make sure that those points line up. They're made to line up throughout the center of the, well, approximate center of the letters, but they're made to line up. Okay. Once you have those just the way you like them, we're going to take a 1-inch piece of tape about the length of that. Using my utility knife, I am going to trim the tape to the size of the letter. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of the tape so I don't overhang the top and the bottom. And then just very carefully place the tape over the letters and press in place. Now make sure you press these letters firmly. You don't want to have to do this again. All right. We'll flip the letters over now and apply just small dots of glue to each of the letters, just in various spots. Now I'm not applying very much glue, just a little dot, several little dots. On each letter. You don't want too much, oops, you don't want too much glue because you don't want to have to clean these letters up. It's not much fun to have to remove glue from each letter. So just a small dot, and then we'll take our backer, or I'm sorry, we'll take our sign and flip the letters into place. Just kind of eyeball it to get it about in the center. The S and the N can touch the bottom or just slightly above that, but just get it about the center before you press it into place. And press the letters into place, and then just hold them for a few seconds just to allow the glue to set up slightly before continuing on. That's it for this step. We'll move on to step number 4. Before moving on to step number 4, it's a good time just to go through and sand all the CNC parts. If you haven't done that already, now is a good time for that. Allow the parts to dry up a little bit, and we'll come back with step number 4. All right, before continuing on to step number 4, be sure that your lower front wall and lower bump out assembly have dried. In this case, mine are ready to go. So I've lined up lower side panel. Now again, that's 22.5, 45. I'm lining up that with the other 22.5 degree miter of the bump out assembly. So line those two up using one of the panels to line up the bottoms. I'm going to apply tape as with the other steps and firmly attach those two together. I'm going to do the second one, and the same way I am going to apply the tape. Okay, and flip those over. Carefully flip them over without knocking the tape off. And again, we're going to apply tape, apply glue to the bottom of the valley, staying 1/2 inch from the top, 1/2 inch from the bottom. Right size bead, we're going to do both panels. And using the plan sheet, we will close that panel, gently close the panel until they line up with the plan sheet, like so. Hopefully you can see that, but that lines up perfect. I'm going to, again, attach one piece of tape about in the center, point it snug, and wrapping it completely around to hold that in place. Again, if you have any glue squeeze out, just be sure to wipe that before it dries. I'm just going to double check, verify that those are closed correctly, and they are. I will set both of these aside. Finish the other one. I'll set them both aside, allow those to dry for 1/2 hour before continuing, and I will come back with step number 5. Step 5, building the roof cornice. I have the two right side cornice pieces. I have the bump out for the right side, and then I have the side for the right side. Now I'm lining up the two 22.5 degree miters. There on the bump out has a 45 degree on one side, and then a 22.5 degree on the other side. So at this point, we're going to glue the 22.5 degree sides together. Now you want to apply glue to both pieces. This is an extremely porous piece, and we want to make sure it stays together. So I'm applying glue to the center, and I'm just going to rub it in with my finger, keeping most of it in the center of the piece. And then I'm going to repeat with the other piece, and again rub that in, and then I'm just going to take a little away from the edge so I don't don't have too much squeeze out. All right, and then just carefully line the fronts and the backs up so it lines up right. And then just squeeze it together, and we're just gonna hold this for about a minute while the glue sets up. And then we'll leave this piece, we'll do the left side roof cornice before completing the cornice build. Okay, I completed the right side and then moved on and did the same with the left side, repeating the same steps, gluing both surfaces and then attaching them together. Now I am attaching the final pieces. Now these have sat for over a half an hour to allow the glue to set up, so I don't have to worry about handling the pieces. Again, we're going to do the same as we did with the first one. We're going to apply glue. In this case, I'm applying it first to the front. Then to make sure you have the matching assembly for this part. So just line them up, make sure you have the right one. I'll apply glue the same way. And again, just rub it in. Now if it dries out, you don't have enough glue on there, just put a little more in the center. And that should do it. And then I'm just gonna hold two sides together, lining up again the front and the back. And again, I'm gonna hold this for about 2 minutes, or maybe even a little longer, to allow the glue to begin to set up, and then I can let go of it and it will stay together. Okay, and then just repeat those steps with the other side roof cornice and set the cornice assembly aside to allow it to dry. When we come back, we'll be beginning step number 6. Step 6, railing assembly. Now the railings come with a smoother side and a rougher side. In this step, we want to make sure that we're working with the smooth side up. Now I've applied tape to the bottoms of each of the railings. Now it's arbitrary to which side you put it on because the railings are the same both ways, but we just want to know where one of the bottoms are as we assemble the railings, and you'll see as we progress. I also have 5 posts, 2 half posts, and 2 special posts. I also have the railing spacer for assembly. Now yours that comes with the kit is going to be dyed red for easy identification. There are 2 different sizes. Now there's 3/16 inch this way and 1/4 inch this way. Now you'll be able to tell which way it's supposed to go because it will line up with the railing like so. If you would turn it that way, it wouldn't fit right. So you want to make sure, be very careful on the placement and that they're always in the same direction. That will put your railing in about the center of the post. With that, we're going to take 2 of the largest railing sections, which are the sides. There's 4 of those all together. And in this step, we're going to reverse the 2. So on one, we will put the post cap on the right, and on the other one, we will put it on the left, so we have mirror images. So let's do the first one. Now I'm using one of the upper panels as my spacer, and I'm sorry, as my alignment. And then I'm going to place a spacer, then the first railing section on top of that, and then 1 post next to that. I will apply a small dot of glue to each of the post ends, the railing ends, and just a single drop is all you need, less to have to clean up. Again, make sure that the tape is towards the bottom, towards our alignment. Place it on top of the spacer, hold it firmly in place, and slide the post up to it. Then I am going to apply glue to the other railing. And in this case, I'm going to do both sides. Again, just a drop. Lining the bottom up, I'm going to slide the base out of the way so I can, or slide the piece out of the way so I can grab my spacer, move it over to the other side. Without disturbing the first one, I'm going to set it down. Make sure again, our bottoms are at the bottom, our pieces of tape or whatever you use. And we're going to slide the other one in and push the two together as we hold it down. And then just make sure that everything stays together. I'm just going to hold it here for about 15 seconds. Let it set up just a little bit before moving on to the mirror image of this one. And now I'm going to hold it together as I slide it out of my way so I can keep moving here. And we'll go to the other one now. Remember, this is the mirror image. So we're going to work from right to left this time, just so we don't forget where the end piece goes. Again, the same as before, the same amount of glue, just a drop, spacer, tape at the bottom, feed in our first post. You can certainly hold it for a couple of seconds and allow the glue to begin to set up. I'm going to slide again the upper wall out of the way, move the post over, again apply glue to the other side railing, to both sides, and again I'm going to slide the top side up. My tape is at the bottom. Line it up on the spacer, put my other post in and slide the two together and just make sure it's tight with the spacer. Now I'm just going to hold these together again for a few seconds and allow them to set up. And I'm just going to carefully hold it all together and move it out of the way. Okay, now we're going to attach the special post to the two front railings. Now, in this case, we are going to work with the front railing upside down. Now, the tape is still going to be at the bottom, but we're going to place the good side facing down. Okay, so do that for both of them. And when we're done with this step, it will flip and this will actually be the front. So with our spacer and our two special posts. Now this special post, this is the orientation that they go in. So this would be the one side and this would be the other side. So that is the surface that makes contact. Now just refer to the plan sheet if you're in doubt with how they go. The plan sheet details it pretty well for you, but that is how they go, and hopefully you can see that well. So I will apply glue to the first one. Again, just a drop will do it. And laying it down with the face down, again, I'm going to just tilt the special post into place. So slide it in flat and just tilt it up to meet the railing. I'll hold this for a couple of seconds, allow it to set up a little bit, and then I will do the other side. Again, I'm going to do this side and attach the special post to the opposite side on this one. So we have a mirror image. And I'm going to slide my special post over and down. And again, the tape is down and the face is down. Slide the special post up, bump into it, and just tilt it into place and push it down. Again, we just want to hold that for a couple of seconds. And then I am going to attach. I'm carefully going to lift this. You can wait until these dry before you continue. I'm going to keep moving. And I am going to glue one side, move the spacer over, and apply a regular post to the other side. Carefully holding it flush with my panel. Hold it for just a couple of seconds, and we'll move it up. Slide our spacer over. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side. I'm being real gentle not to knock the other piece off. And I'm going to be really careful setting it back down. I'll slide everything up. And now I'm going to be really careful not to move anything because nothing is dry at this point. So I just want to push the two together. Make sure everything is flat to the table or your surface. And then we're going to hold it here for about a minute before moving on. I'm also going to attach the half posts to the back railings. Now again, we want to make sure that our tape is on the bottom, our spacer, and then the half post. So I'm going to, now these again are going to be mirror images. So we want one on one left and the other on the right of the other. I'm going to apply 2 drops of glue to just one side. Again, line it up with the spacer, holding it tight. Slide in a half post and hold that for a couple of seconds. And we'll move that out of the way. And we'll do the mirror image of the other one. Apply glue to the other side of the other one. Make sure the tape's on the bottom. Slide in our half post. Make sure everything's flush and just hold that for a couple of seconds. And now you can set the railing sections aside, and we will finish up the railing in step 12. So when we come back, we will be working on step number 7. All right, moving on with step number 7, the lower body final assembly. I have the 2 side assemblies. Now, if yours haven't sat for 30 minutes or longer, you may wish to wait until those do, because we need to apply tape around the entire body, so you want to make sure that those are completely dry before continuing. In fact, I would recommend a little longer than 30 minutes. Mine have sat for 30 minutes, so they are ready to go. I have those 2 assemblies, the 2 lower back walls, and also the lower front wall or saloon door wall. So I have those parts. The same as we did in previous steps, we're going to use, in this case, I'm going to use, it doesn't really matter what you use, but I'm going to use an upper panel to line these up. I'm going to start with the 2 back panels, making sure they are, again, perfectly flush with the bottom. I'm going to apply tape without applying pressure to the seam itself, without holding the panels flat. Press the tape in firmly. We'll slide everything down and tape the bump out assembly to one of the back walls. Apply the tape in the same manner and move on to the last side. Again, make sure that the bottoms are perfectly flush. you will have problems in the end if they are not perfectly flush. But it isn't that hard to keep them flush. Okay, again, apply the tape. We're going to carefully flip these panels over. Now I'm using 1.5 inch tape again for this. If you're using the 1 inch tape, you're going to want to apply tape across the seams in this direction also to kind of help hold things together. The 1.5 holds things together pretty well. So we'll flip that over. And again, we're going to apply glue in the same manner we did at the bottom of the valleys, 1/2 inch from the top, 1/2 inch from the bottom. And we're going to do all three. Hopefully you can see that. And then where the front wall meets, we're going to apply glue to this portion of it. We don't want the glue to squeeze out, so we're going to apply it like so. And we're going to do that on both sides. And I'm just going to put just a tiny bit in the corner, a really, 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 really small amount. Then I'm going to stand the panels up, close the gaps, and before I finish closing, we'll take the front panel and place that in its little spot there. And I'm just going to pull the front together so everything is tight. You want that front panel to be tight and everything is nice and flush. I've taken the time, I've cut 2 long pieces of tape to help hold this together. So as I hold it with one hand, I'm just going to force the tape around and continue all the way around the house if you can. I like to go from tape to tape, so I go all the way around. And to make it easier, I'll flip it over and we'll do the same with the bottom. So I'm going to start in the middle of the back, squeeze it together as I pull tight. And, oh, a little too tight. Let's do that again. Pull it together like so, and just make sure that your front panel is tight in that direction also, which it is. Okay, if your panels don't line up perfectly, you can place it on there and just press the corners together, or the front and the back together, until everything lines up perfectly. In this case, it lines up absolutely perfect, so I will set that aside and we will move on to step number 8. Step 8, upper body assembly. Now, my 2 bump out sections have had at least 40 minutes to dry, to set up, so I can work with them. You want them to sit long enough that they're not going to come apart when you tape the final assembly. So a minimum of 30 minutes, and I would let them sit a little longer if you can. I also have the front panel. Now you want to make sure that the bird opening is closer to the bottom than the top. Okay, so we'll flip that over, and I'm going to start with 1 bump out here. I'm going to line up the 2 pieces flush with the bottom of my floor panel, and I'm using a floor panel here for alignment. And I'm going to make sure that the panels don't ride up on each other. I want them to be touching but not overlapping. I'll apply a piece of tape to the first seam, or the first section there, and apply firm pressure while holding it down. And we'll do the same on the other side again, making sure that the bottoms are tight, flat and flush. Apply the tape And I have already wiped off all of the panels so they are free of dust. You want to make sure that the dust has been wiped off, otherwise the tape doesn't stick well enough. Then I'm going to raise that up, or push the two bump outs, two side sections down, so the bump out, or I'm sorry, the front opening comes up. I'll move the floor over, line up the bottoms again, and holding them flush with the bottom, apply another piece of tape to that seam. Slide everything down and repeat with the final back panel. Okay, and again, just make sure that the bottoms are flush. Apply our piece of tape. To the seam. Well, I didn't do the best job there. Let's try that again. And press firmly into place. All right, then I'm going to carefully flip the panels over, flip them upside down so we can apply glue to the valleys. And again, stay a ½ inch from the top and a ½ inch from the bottom. And just a right size bead. Also, you want to apply glue to one of the back panels, the free edges. And then I'm going to stand it up, and using the plans, I'm going to close this. So I'm going to lay everything on top of the plans as I close the panels to make sure that everything lines up. So line it up with the plans, close the panels gently. You shouldn't have to force them. And they should be flush also with the bottom. And while holding them closed, I'm just going to attach a piece of tape all the way around and pulling tight on the back, not too tight. And your tape should be long enough that you can go from tape to tape. That'll help hold everything together. And once you have your first piece of tape on, if you have to adjust it a little bit, on your second piece, you can tighten it up a little bit. So now I'm just going to flip this over, and I'm going to apply another piece of tape to this side. But before I do that, this is a good time to make sure that you are square with the back. So you want to make sure that your panels are perfectly square. If they're not, in this case it's off a little bit, I'm just going to push the back and the front together a little bit, just gently. You don't have to push that much usually to get it close. If it's not perfect, that's okay. And that is pretty close. And then I'm just going to apply one more piece of tape at the top. That was the bottom I was working with. So I'm going to apply one at the top. I'm going to pull this one a little tighter and wrap it all the way around. Now, if your seam is not perfectly tight, that's okay. We can adjust for that as we go on, but I'm just going to, one more time, place it on the plans and just make sure that we are, if not perfectly square, at least make sure that we are close to square. And we are. That does it for step 8. When we come back, we will be working on step 9. All right, moving on to step number 9, assembling the trowel and hitch. I have all the pieces here that I need. I have front, bottom, and back. So we got 3 of those, they're all the same. 2 side pieces, 2 posts, and 1 hitch. I'm gonna start with one of the back bottom pieces, front, back, bottom pieces, and apply just a small amount of glue to the 2 edges, like so, maybe like so. Lay the piece down using the roof panel to line everything up. I'm just going to push 2 sides in, push them against that roof panel to make sure that they are flush, and hold them together. Now you want to let these dry for a couple of minutes before moving on to install the sides. I have a piece ready to go here, so we will flip over. Now I'm going to apply glue to both sides of the trowel. And now center the 2 sides on there. The sides are a little longer than the base itself. So center those, push them in, and just hold them for a few seconds until they set up. I'm going to apply a small amount of glue to the part that will attach to the side of the trowel. And I'm going to do both posts. Slide those into place, center on both sides, and press them into place. I'm going to apply a small drop of glue to both tops, and then place the hitch on top of that. Again, just eyeball center. All right, repeat those steps with the second trowel and hitch, and then set both of the trowel and hitch aside to allow them to dry. And when we come back, we'll move on to step number 10. All right, moving on to step number 10. Now, before you continue with this step, you want to make sure that your upper body has dried, or the glue has set up long enough to make sure that it is set. At least a half an hour is recommended. Ours is ready to go. Mine is ready to go, I should say. So I am going to take the top assembly with the tape still attached. Now remember, the bird opening for the door goes lower, so this is our top. So I'm going to take the roof panel, flip it upside down, and you'll know it's upside down because there are saw marks at the front. Okay, so that is going to be the bottom. Place that side up, and with the birdhouse upside down, make sure that now the opening is still towards the bottom, which is now our top. And we're just going to align that as close as we can to center. Just align the panels up the best you can. And with our pencil, we're going to hold this in place, and I am just going to trace the inside all the way around and make sure the pencil line is tight to the walls. So I'm leaning the pencil in so it is tight. All right, with that, we can set the body aside again. And with our pencil marks, we're going to attach the friction blocks. Now, this is what holds the roof tight to the upper body. So you want these right on the line. Make sure they are on the line. And we're going to do one on each of the back panels and then one on the front. Now there's a miter at the top. That goes to the outside. That's to allow the roof to slide on a little easier. So make sure that goes up and to the front. So there's the little miter, and it's up and towards the front. And then we're going to glue these on. Apply a decent amount of glue on these. They are holding the roof on. And just place it in the center and start from the line and lean it back. Let's see, once you get that line, lean it back then to force the glue out towards the middle and not the front. And this one's just not cooperating. Okay, once you get that, we'll move on and do the other two panels. I'm sorry, the other two blocks. And when we come back, we will be working on step number 11. So finish up your glue blocks and come back. We'll be on step number 11. All right, we're moving on to step number 11. We're gonna attach the upper and the lower assemblies to their floors. So starting with the upper, we're gonna make sure that we have it, again, with the bird opening towards the bottom. So we want that part towards the bottom. So that is gonna go towards the floor. So we'll flip it over. And I didn't bother removing the tape. You don't have to remove the tape quite yet if you don't want to. My panels have not been sitting that long. I'm going to apply glue to the center all the way around all of the panels. Now make sure you don't mess any areas. Make sure you got a solid bead going throughout the floor. This will prevent water from getting in to the bottom of the bird or bottom of any of the floors. And then we'll flip this over. Being careful to line everything up. And if you're not perfectly square, just make sure you adjust the difference on both sides. So you should have equal amounts hanging off, or not hanging off, but coming in if anything. So there is the top. We'll do the same with the bottom. Now the bottom doesn't matter which way it goes. We'll apply a glue again to the entire bottom of the panels, including the little bump out piece. Now again, make sure we got no gaps. We don't want water getting in there. Flip the panel over and attach it to the second floor. And again, just make sure everything is true and flush. And you can just run your finger down there to feel where it is. And that's it. So now you can set these two assemblies aside, allow them to dry for 30 minutes before doing anything further with them. And when we come back, we will be moving on to step number 12. Step 12, final railing assembly. With our assembled pieces now having set long enough, we will continue with the final assembly. Now the orientation I have them laid out here is the orientation in which they go. I have all of the bottoms down and the smooth sides up. And this piece will go with this piece, okay? And again, this one with this one, mirrored images. So when I flip this up, I'm gonna stand this piece up. The good side is out. I'm gonna take this one and flip it this way. So again, the good side is out, and those are the two ends that I'm gonna glue together. So again, I'm gonna use the spacer and our base or our floor, and I will line everything up and then apply glue to the two ends of the back railing. And stand this back up and slide the two together, keeping everything flush with the bottom and flat. Then I'm just going to slide these. I'm pinching them together, by the way, as I move them around just to keep them from moving. I'm just going to move it out of my way. And I'll let that piece dry for a little bit. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stand this up so the bottom is still at the bottom. Flip this one over, and those are the sides that are going to line up. So again, I'll apply glue. Flip it upside down, make sure the bottoms are in the correct orientation, and slide these two together. I'm just going to hold it for a couple of seconds here. Now I'm just going to let these set up for just a couple of minutes before I do the final assembly. For the final rail assembly, we are going to work with the pieces standing up. So I have the three final sections here. I have the front and then the two sides, the left and the right side. And note that I have the tape at the bottom of all three of them. So this is the orientation that we are going to install them. If you question it, just take a look at your your plan sheet, and that will show you how to lay them out. But we will apply, again, just a drop of glue to just the side railing on one. I'm just going to leave that standing up while I do the other one. I'm going to do both of them at the same time so I can hold them together and keeping them in the orientation that they belong. And a drop on that side. Lay them all down. We'll start with this side. Now, don't push down on the connection here because you're going to flip it. So you want to make sure it stays flat and flush, and just line up the fronts. So the front and the back are even. And that they are. I'm just going to hold them for a second or two here. While I'm holding them, I'm just going to move a little bit so I can do the other side. And I'll do the other side. And you probably can't see this one, but it's just the same way I did that first one. And I'll press it in. And just make sure everything stays together. We can move on to step number 13 and 14 and do those while the railing dries up. Step number 13, we're going to install the windows. Now there's a spacer block that also happens to be the saloon door backer piece. This is 1 inch high exactly, and this is going to be used for spacing the windows. You want to make a mark. We can use our ruler on our plan sheet. At the bottom of the plan sheet, you're going to find a ruler. Make a mark a 1/2 inch in at the top, flip it over, make another one 1/2 inch at the bottom, and then do the same for the other side. And that'll help us align the windows a little easier. Okay, so starting with, and now all the windows are 1 inch from the bottom, regardless of top or bottom, upper or lower. So how this spacer works is we want to align it with the outside edge, so it's flush with that outside edge. And then our window will go sit flush on top and line it up with the pencil mark like so. We'll do that with all 4. And I'm just going to apply glue to a couple of spots to the windows. And to the center of the cross pieces. And then just line it up, starting from the bottom, and press it into place. Remove the spacer, holding the window firmly. And let's rotate and do that with the other side. And again with the other side, line it up with the outside. Apply the glue. Like so, and again, bottom, pencil mark, line it up, lean it in, hold it in place, remove the spacer, make sure nothing moves, set that one aside, and repeat with the lower section. Just do the exact same thing with the lower section, put the 2 windows on, and when we come back, we will install the 2 doors. All right, I've repeated the steps with the other windows. So I've installed all 4 windows now, and now we can move on to, and you do want to make sure that all 4 windows get installed, because our little piece that we used earlier for a spacer is now going to get used for the backer of the saloon door. And that's what we're going to start with now. We have the windows installed. I installed, like I said, the last 2. We're going to take the saloon door, and it doesn't matter where you place the glue backer. This is just to add a depth of shadow to the door and pull it away so it looks like the door is separated from the back wall. So I'm going to apply glue, and I'm going to put the pencil marks that I made earlier, I'm going to put those towards the wall so we don't see them, so they don't inadvertently show up through the slats here. I don't want to see the pencil marks. So just in case, we'll do this side. And I am going to apply glue to both sides this time. And a pretty decent amount of glue. We want this to stay in place without having to hold it, so apply enough glue that you don't have to hold it in place. So my pencil marks are up, and I'm going to place it about so centered this way, and centered, I'd say, between here and there. It doesn't have to be exact. All right. Now, as far as the placement of the saloon door itself, it's all preference. You can place it a little lower. If you refer back to the directions, you can kind of go by the picture on the front as to where it should be placed. And it is, I believe it's also 1 inch. So about the same as where the bottom of the windows are. So you can use that as a reference also. And that's where I kind of like it. But like I said, it is personal preference. I'm just going to tilt it back so it stays in place. Center it from left to right so the gap is equal on both sides. And we are about in the center. I'm just going to hold it for a couple of seconds, let the glue just set up just a little bit, enough that I can set it down. And that should be long enough. Let's see, actually, you know what? I'll tilt it so we can move on to the next step. Okay, the upper. Now this is the bird door. So this should line up pretty much perfect. So you just have to line the two openings together to know that you have it in the right spot. It should be flush with the floor. If the bird hole is up a little bit, you can raise the door up. You shouldn't have to. It should sit when it's flush to the floor. It should line up perfectly. So we're going to now there's no backer for this door. We're going to apply a liberal amount of glue to the field. And then I'm just going to do a line around the perimeter. And around the bird opening, we want to seal that opening off to prevent any moisture from getting in there. And like so. Line it up so it is center. And we're just eyeballing that. And press it in place. Now you can allow the two doors to set up. All right, we're moving on to step number 15, installing the cornice. Now make sure that your blocks that we attached to the roof earlier, make sure those are completely dry before moving on. 45 minutes minimum before installing the roof on here. Now when we're installing the cornice, we need to have the roof installed. The cornice does not get glued at all to the body. It only attaches to the roof section. That makes this roof section removable, and that is how we're going to clean out the bird house at the end of the season. So make sure that your blocks have dried completely. Mine should be dry enough, so I will set those in place. And you'll note that it doesn't necessarily line up perfectly when you put the roof on. That doesn't matter, because when we install the cornice, that is going to cover any imperfections. So that's going to sit like so, and hide anything that's not, absolutely perfect. All right. We'll flip the cornice over, and I'm going to apply glue to, now I don't want to apply glue to this surface too low, because I don't want glue getting down and accidentally coming into contact with the body of the birdhouse itself. So I'm going to make sure when I apply the glue, it's just to this corner, and start in a little bit, and make sure you hit every piece of this. You want enough glue that this is going to stick, and it may not touch, it may not make contact everywhere. So you want enough glue that it doesn't matter if it doesn't contact everywhere. There's going to be enough glue to hold it in place. And I'm just going to put a little more right there. All right, and just flip your cornice over onto the roof, line it up, and just make sure there are no gaps. On the front. Now we're not going to worry about the back. The back doesn't matter. And odds are it's not going to fit perfectly on the back, but that doesn't matter. You're not going to see that. You just want to make sure. In fact, I'm not contacting everywhere, so I'm just going to put a little glue there and a little glue there to make sure that I'm making enough contact. And there we have it. Wipe off any excess. All right, now we're moving on to step number 15, and we're going to install the 4 lower corner posts. These are marked in red on your plan sheet. Now this is just meant to give you an idea of how to place them. You don't actually place this over it when you're laying them out. It's just a general idea, and they certainly don't have to be exactly where these are, but they do line up with the upper posts. So if you get them fairly close, it looks right that way. So number 1 post is going to go on this corner, and it's 1/8 of an inch in from the side and 1/8 of an inch from the back. So we're gonna prepare this post. Now the post should be nice and square on the bottom, so they should stand up perfectly. However, and apply a pretty decent amount of glue on these posts. We can use line of sight to kind of make sure that they're standing straight up and down. So what you would do is stand the post up and just line it up with the side, and also you can line it up with a bump out. So just look across it and you can kind of tell if it's standing straight up and down. It should automatically sit straight up and down, so you shouldn't have to worry about it. Okay, I'm going to place the post about 1/8 of an inch from the side and 1/8 of an inch from the back, equidistant, and just kind of refer to the plans if necessary. And it certainly doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm just going to line it up. I'm going to eyeball it with that side. And I'm just going to nudge it a little bit to straighten it out. And I'm going to line it up with a bump out, and it looks good from that side. So that is good. We'll do the other side the same way. And we'll do the front. Now the front, as you can see in the plans, is 1/8 of an inch from the front, and the corner lines up, so it's about 1/8 of an inch from this piece right here. So 1/8 of an inch, whoop, and it faces this way. Again, you don't have to be precise, so get it where you want it and get it as close as you can. Nobody will ever know if it's off a little bit. Again, 1/8 of an inch back, press it firmly in place. I'm going to use line of sight again to make sure it looks good, and it does. And then just repeat that with the other 2 posts. Set it aside, allow it to dry for a few minutes before placing the top body onto the lower assembly. We have 2 window pediments, which are the 2 smaller ones. And then we have the upper door pediment, which is the larger one. Now, the side you want to glue is this back side. So you want to glue this back side, and it actually sits like that. Okay, and just center them above the windows. So I'm going to apply a small amount of glue to the center of the pediment, and then I'm also going to apply just a little bit of glue to the top of the window, And I am going to slide this in place, and you just want it centered over the window itself and the in between, or in the middle of the panel also. Clean up any glue that comes out before it sets up. Double check it looks good. Move on to the door pediment, and again, apply the glue to the center of the pediment. And I'm going to also apply some to the top of the door, kind of towards the back of the top of the door. And we'll place that in the center above the door. Now the door pediment is a little heavier, so you might want to hold it just for a few minutes and allow it to set up. Just a little bit. And that should be good. And then just to attach the final pediment, and we will move on now we'll go back and we'll install, the top onto the bottom when we get back. I've allowed the railing, I've allowed the post just a little extra time to set up. It's definitely not necessary as long as you're really careful placing it on there. If in doubt at all, just allow the post to set up for a half an hour. Now these are still, they have not been sitting that long, so I'm going to have to be really careful. But again, the body, like we did previously, we're just going to apply glue all the way around, making sure that we hit every one of the body panels. And then we're also going to apply some, quite a bit in fact, to the center of the top of the posts. You just want to be careful that we don't get squeezed out, and if you do that, you wipe it before it dries or clean it up before it dries. I will turn this so it is facing that camera, and hopefully you can see it. Now it's just a matter of lining up the backs of the panels. Everything else will fall into place. So I'm going to lean it towards the back. I'm going to lean it away from the posts as I set it down. So I'm going to line up the furthest back corner. In fact, let me turn it so you can see how I'm doing this. So I'm starting with this corner right here. I'm matching those two corners up, and then I'm going to set down one side, keeping lined up. And I know my lower panels are absolutely perfect, so I know by doing this it's going to come out just fine. Just make sure you're all the way to the edge, and just take your time. It's not a rush, and just gently set the body down. Now you don't want to move the body around once you set it down, because that will knock the post out of alignment. So if you don't get it just right, pull it up and clean off the glue and just do it again. Just take your time, line up that back corner, set it down on one side, and then lay it over, and it should work out just fine for you. Okay, the railing is sat up for a couple of hours now and has thoroughly dried. I would recommend doing the same, because we're going to have to manipulate the railing slightly to get it to line up perfectly on the upper deck. So make sure that the railing is thoroughly dry. As you can see, I've temporarily placed the railing on there just to check for the fit, and so I know what I have to do to get it into shape, to get it to fit. Now you can see that the tape is still on the bottom, so we're going to want to carefully remove the railing and flip it upside down. So we're applying glue to the bottom of the railing. I'm not going to apply glue to the half post, because those are going to get glued to the back wall, or to the wall of the saloon. So I'm just going to place one drop on each of the posts, And you want enough on there that it's going to hold it in place when it's dry. I'm also going to glue the back side, or the part of the half post that attaches to the saloon. And then we'll flip it up, right side up. And you're going to need a little patience with this. You will have to hold the railing in place for a couple of minutes while it sets up. Now be careful not to touch anything too quickly. Get it into place. Line everything up. And make sure that the outside is equidistant on all sides, and then we'll push it back in to the saloon itself. Now, I have to bend the back rails just slightly to get them straight, not a whole lot. And just get it in place to where it's going to look good. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, I'm going to hold the railing in place here for a couple of minutes while the glue sets up. We don't want anything to shift after I let go. So when we come back, we will be working on the last two steps and installing the trowel and the final step, the saloon sign. Okay, moving on to the final two steps of the Old West Saloon build. We're going to install now the two trowel and hitching posts and also the saloon sign. For this step, you might want to use, you don't need to, but you might want to use the spacer that we used in the earlier step of building out the railing. Okay, for the trowel themselves and the hitching posts, you can install them wherever you would like in the front. You just want to keep the two the same. So wherever you install the first one, you want to install the second one. Now I like mine a little closer to the post, the outside post, like you see here. Now, like I said though, you can place yours wherever you would like. So we're just going to apply a little bit of glue to the bottom of the trowel. And I'm just eyeballing it. You don't need to be that particular, but you can certainly use the ruler and measure out if you would like. And I'm also going to place the other one as I did the first one. And just make sure that they are approximately in the same place, just so they look good is all that matters. And back a little bit. And there you have it. So now you can see where I installed mine, and you can install yours where you would like. Okay, now we're going to install the saloon sign itself. And for this step, you're also going to need the saloon backer piece that we are going to install towards the bottom, and maybe just off of the bottom just a little bit, but you just don't want it to be seen. So approximately in that configuration right there. So I will apply glue to both sides of the backer. And it doesn't matter which is front and which is back. So I'm going to center it from side to side and place it about 1/16 of an inch from the bottom. Is good enough. And we'll pull the saloon in. And now I'm going to use the spacer. Now you don't need to use the spacer. I'm going to use it in the high side. So I'm going to use it standing up. You can place your sign wherever you'd like. If you'd like, you can place it right on top of the pediment, or you can raise it up, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to use that spacer so I am evenly spaced. And then I am just going to center from left to right, and that'll do it. Okay, I'm going to leave the railing spacer in place until the saloon sign is thoroughly dried. But that does it for the Old West Saloon build. I hope you enjoyed your build, and I really appreciate you purchasing the Old West Saloon. Be sure to check out the other birdhouses that we have on Amazon. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.